Strange New World should solve a 19-year-old Star Trek Enterprise character mystery. For a show that aired its final episode nearly 2 decades ago, Star Trek Enterprise left behind more than its fair share of unresolved threads. While the series ultimately tried to tie things up in its controversial finale, these are the voyages. Some character arcs remained wide open. Among the most tantalizing of these is the mystery surrounding Ensign Hoshi Sato. The communications officer and linguistic genius played by Linda Park was instrumental in helping humanity make first contact with alien species, but her future after the events of Enterprise remains a glaring question mark. Now, with Star Trek, Strange New Worlds boldly exploring the timeline just a century later, the time has come to revisit one of Enterprise's most underdeveloped and underserved characters. Solving the mystery of what happened to Hoshi Sato wouldn't just honor the legacy of Enterprise. It would deepen the already rich lore of Starfleet history and help bridge the narrative gap between the 22nd century NX era and the 23rd century adventures of Pike, Spock, and the crew of the USS Enterprise. Hoshi's disappearance from Trek canon. Hoshi Sato was introduced in Enterprise's pilot episode as a gifted linguist who could decipher alien languages in real time. Throughout the show's 4-season run, she proved herself indispensable in decoding Xindi transmissions, forming diplomatic relationships, and even hacking into hostile systems. But despite her importance on the bridge, Hoshi's character development often fell by the wayside compared to her crewmates. By the time Enterprise reached its series finale, the focus had shifted away from Hoshi and toward the broader Federation building plotlines. The finale, framed as a holodeck simulation aboard the Enterprise D, offered a broad strokes depiction of the crew's final mission but failed to provide closure for Hoshi individually. We're left to wonder, did she stay in Starfleet? Did she influence future generations of communications officers? Or, more darkly, did something happen to her that Starfleet chose to erase from the record? This is the mystery Strange New Worlds is uniquely positioned to solve. The perfect show to revisit the past. Set in the mid-23rd century, Strange New Worlds exists in a transitional time when the Federation is still maturing but already learning from the mistakes of its past. While the show has mostly been forward-facing, it has not shied away from legacy connections. We've already seen appearances and references to characters from the original series, Discovery, and even deep dives into the Starfleet archives. This is what makes Strange New Worlds such fertile ground for resolving Enterprise's lingering mysteries. The show's episodic format allows room for storytelling detours that explore characters, history, and philosophical quandaries. Bringing in a storyline tied to Hoshi Sato could be both a tribute to the past and a compelling tale of how Starfleet evolved thanks to her early contributions. The temporal Cold War angle. One theory about Hoshi's fate hinges on the Enterprise subplot known as the Temporal Cold War. Throughout the series, multiple factions from different time periods sought to manipulate the past for their own ends. While much of this plotline fizzled out in later seasons, it left the door open for future shows to pick up the baton. What if Hoshi Sato got caught in the crossfire? Imagine this. Captain Pike receives a mission from Starfleet Command about a temporal anomaly discovered near the old launch site of the NX-01 Enterprise. Spock, ever the historian, uncovers that Hoshi Sato's logs mysteriously ended years before her death was officially recorded. Through a series of clues, perhaps even a recovered transmission from the 22nd century, the crew pieces together that Hoshi may have been pulled into a temporal rift and is trapped in a pocket dimension, or worse, stranded in an alternate timeline. This wouldn't just be a clever retcon. It would allow Strange New Worlds to address one of Trek's most mysterious plots while giving a forgotten character the screen time she deserves. A legacy left behind. Another way to approach the Hoshi mystery is through legacy. Rather than focusing on what happened to her, Strange New Worlds could introduce a character who claims descent from Hoshi Sato, or better yet, someone inspired by her life's work. In an episode where communications with an alien species break down disastrously, Uhura, still in the early days of her career, might study Hoshi's old mission logs for insight. She might uncover experimental language protocols or unfinished linguistic theories that help bridge the cultural gap. Through holographic recreations or personal letters, we could get glimpses of Hoshi's later life, Perhaps she became a teacher, founded the Federation Linguistics Institute, or wrote a universal translator algorithm that changed everything. In this way, Hoshi's impact on Starfleet could be restored, not through spectacle, but through influence. It would show that even those whose names aren't etched on plaques or mentioned in passing by Kirk still shape the galaxy in fundamental ways. Bringing back Linda Park. Of course, nothing would bring this full circle like the return of Linda Park herself. The actress has spoken fondly of her time on Enterprise, and bringing her back for a guest role, or even a mini-arc, could elevate the episode into something truly special. Whether she plays an older Hoshi pulled out of time, or a holographic version preserved in the Starfleet archives, her presence would lend authenticity and emotional gravity. For fans of Enterprise, it would be a powerful payoff to nearly 2 decades of wondering what happened to her. For newcomers, it would be an intriguing story about a woman ahead of her time, literally and metaphorically. Reclaiming the importance of communication. One of Enterprise's most underrated themes was the importance of communication, not just linguistically, but culturally and emotionally. Hoshi's role was central to this. She was often the first voice aliens heard when meeting humans, and the first to hear alien perspectives unfiltered. In a franchise often focused on captains and tacticians, Hoshi represented the idea that diplomacy and understanding were just as vital as phasers and warp drives. Modern Trek often touches on communication as a theme, but Strange New Worlds has a golden opportunity to place it front and center again. Revisiting Hoshi's story could remind audiences that progress isn't always made at warp speed. It's built word by word, phrase by phrase, understanding by understanding. An episode focused on her could dive into the psychology of early explorers, the trauma of encountering the unknown, and the burden of being the voice for an entire species. It could contrast Hoshi's time with the more confident, interconnected Federation era, showing just how far Starfleet has come because of people like her. The time is right. With Strange New Worlds gaining critical acclaim for blending nostalgia with innovation, now is the time to revisit unfinished business. Trek fans love continuity, but more than that, they love resolution. We've seen arcs for Spock, Chapel, and even Sibik revisited and enriched. It's only fair that Enterprise, a show that laid the groundwork for so much Federation lore, be given the same courtesy. And among all its unresolved character threads, none is more ripe for exploration than Hoshi Sato. Whether featuring her descendants or